product provided by Koei Tecmo Europe. Fatal Frame 2 has joined the expanding list of horror game number 2s that are getting remade from the ground up, as well as the list of games getting remade for the second time. It also marks a unification of the Western titles by bringing over the superior Fatal Frame title to Europe, where the series was previously called Project Zero. I haven't played either of the prior versions in quite some time, so I can't provide a deep analysis of the differences between them. This will mostly be a discussion of the game in a vacuum as the series' big reintroduction after not having had a new entry since the Wii U. The reason this review has taken so long to get made is primarily due to the state the game originally launched in. It wasn't buggy or anything, the polish wasn't the issue. The difficulty was. For whatever reason, enemies were ridiculously overtuned, even on story difficulty, to the point of random low-level ghosts being absurd slogs to deal with. And releasing right around the same time as Resident Evil Requiem was certainly a choice. So yeah, comparing the launch state of the two games, not even a contest. Fortunately, the game was patched, and I was elated to see all the nerfs they gave the ghost to make the game actually manageable. If you play the game now, you'll be getting the superior experience, but I do believe that acknowledging launch state is important to hold companies accountable for the state in which they first took money for their products. Now, as for how the game is supposed to be, the game is a narratively faithful remake of Fatal Frame's popular second entry, following twins Mio and Mayu Amakura exploring an abandoned village inhabited by the dead, who are influencing Mayu to try and complete a deadly ritual. All the story from the original release is present, with 2 new endings. The endings from the Wii version are not included here, sadly. In terms of which one to remake, this was the right choice, given it's the most popular, I think. It has a cohesive flow without feeling samey, and its central sibling relationship hasn't been tainted by incest like the first game's has. And there was a pretty obvious direction to go for the devs to improve the game. The developers have chosen to expand on the relationship between the two sisters, since Mio is motivated exclusively by Mayu throughout the game, but the two spend most of the game apart. So, some sections are expanded to have the two stay together, Mio being able to pull her sister by the hand as they go. Unfortunately, while I like the idea, and the smile Mio gives her sister whenever they start holding hands is very sweet, this does draw attention to an issue a lot of games have when pairing the player with an NPC whose bond with the protagonist is meant to be a key aspect of the experience, but doesn't give them lengthy dialogue exchanges during downtime. It's all or nothing with these things for some reason. The game rarely has Mio say anything back to Mayu, to the point that it feels as if Mio talks about Mayu to herself more often than she does to Mayu outside of cutscenes. Bear in mind, Mayu is very clearly possessed, talking about events that are not her own experiences and being led deeper into the village by voices Mio can't hear. And yet, Mio seems to never acknowledge this, no asking what Mayu is talking about, not telling her those aren't her thoughts, not even trying to comfort her when she's afraid. She comes off very cold and aloof as a result, the way one would expect a voiceless avatar to, when that's clearly not her actual characterization, as you can see in the cutscenes. Sadly, the sisters' dynamic remains limited mostly to the handful of cutscenes where the two are together, and even then, Mayu spends so much time tranced out and talking nonsense that they still don't really interact all that much. I think taking the approach of the Resident Evil remakes would have been beneficial here, allowing the devs to have more leeway in expanding the two's dynamic, perhaps having them be together far more early on, with Mayu slowly slipping deeper into possession and becoming more distant over the span of a few hours, to give us a better feel for their relationship and to properly witness it being pulled away from Mio. One area where I feel the sisters were done justice though, is with the graphics. After they patched in the option to turn off that aggressive film grain, the game's visuals can really shine. The village looks good and the weather effects are beautiful. The twins feel like they're supposed to be somewhere between the original versions and their aged up Koei Tecmo standard art style counterparts from the Wii version. I think it's a nice balance, and their outfits are faithfully recreated with added detail and physics. It's a good opening offering for this new era in that regard. Where I think the art falters a bit are the ghosts. There was always a real deathly look to the old ghosts, very stark and pale, bordering on monochrome, which did come partly from the general art style of those games, but it really made them pop and look spooky. But here, a fair few of the ghosts just look like people, not really pale enough to carry that ethereal aura that ghosts in a game about fighting ghosts should have. Hopefully the next game can bring them back to the older style. The voice acting is about on the level one would expect from the series at this point, often being quiet and somewhat flat, despite having the likes of Erica Mendez and Xanthi Huynh as the twins. Again, I think we could have seen better results from a whole new script to give them more to work with. My only standout positive with the dub is that, to me, Erica manages to make Mio sound enough like Corey Walgren's Mio from the original at times to where the change isn't distracting and is barely noticeable in some scenes. Otherwise, it's a standard Fatal Frame dub, so it's hard to be upset about it. They also didn't fix the issue of Mio not referring to Mayu as One-chan, despite how important it is for the player to understand which of the two is older by the late game, which is a constant issue across all 3 versions dubs. And now, lacking a clever segue into it, let's discuss the gameplay. This one feels quite different, especially coming off the last 2 entries. See, that era was defined by motion control gimmicks that actually did offer some good dimensions to combat, having the player tilt the camera to get more damage points into frame at once to really lay on the damage. This game brings us back to a static camera for the viewfinder, instead finding depth in lenses, which have been condensed down to 4 from other entries. Different lenses offer different puzzle solving utility, such as revealing Mayu's path, or warping reality to match photographs you find to give the player access to new paths or hidden items. These lenses translate into combat by offering different damage outputs, reload times, and special shot effects, which can then be made more standout from each other via upgrades acquired by slotting jewels into the appropriate nodes on the skill tree. You'll find yourself choosing which benefit to prioritize to find the preferred weapon type for your playstyle. And there's a simple dodge for putting distance between yourself and lunging enemies. It all adds just enough depth without becoming overbearing. Sadly, the tutorials are overbearing as they tend to come in sets of 3 or more prompts with multiple pages each that don't come up as one, but give you a tiny window of unpausing between to make you think it's over but then pull the rug out from under you. It tends to over-explain these things, while some tutorials like how stealth attacks work are relegated to optional prompts that the player can opt in or out of. It's really poor, somewhat archaic design, and contributed a lot to my initial bad impression of the game. Enemies act about the way you would expect by now, phasing in and out of reality, trying to flank you and add some space. They don't go through the walls as often, I find, compared to the more recent entries, which could be an intentional rework, or just a result of the interior environments feeling less cramped generally. What's new is, enemies can go into a berserk state once their health is under a certain threshold, making them more aggressive and granting some health regen. This is what was severely overdone initially, allowing even rando enemies to get a bunch of health back because you made the mistake of bringing their health down. Again, this has been fixed, but needs to be acknowledged. Fortunately, the series' iconic schoolgirl trot doesn't feel nearly as slow as the last few games, making exploration less of a slog. And that's good, because there is a lot of side content to discover. We have dolls that come in pairs, requiring you to line them up in frame to snap both together. We have the usual harmless spirits that give us a glimpse into the lore behind this ritual's failure and the years that pass between. And we even have side quests, tracking these spirits across the village to uncover their untimely fate and, sometimes, send them on their way to the other side. Unfortunately, items found in these side quests, and key items, are all stored in a single list of items, and they don't get removed even when used, making it an absolute pain to try and sort through. The Wii era mechanic of slowly reaching out to grab an item, sometimes being grabbed by a ghost, is used very sparingly here. Only certain items that are just a bit more out of reach will have this mechanic utilised, with most items just being picked up normally. And even then, at least on story difficulty, the ghost hand appears in those way less often. It's clear that they want to quicken the pace of the series a bit with this release, which the next inclusion feels somewhat at odds with. Along the way, we have a wraith that appears in certain areas to pursue Mio like Resident Evil's famous pursuer enemies. Unfortunately, this is the most basic implementation of such an enemy that makes areas it patrols tedious. This game does not allow you to defend yourself, forcing you to run and hide until it goes past and then sneak away, or slowly walk behind it until it turns a different direction so you can go through. If it grabs you, you cannot escape it and you die. You cannot stun it for a time at the cost of some resources like in Resi, offering the player an interesting choice between patience and efficiency at a cost. I find this style of pursuer generally boring, and hope future attempts will put more power into the player's hand to make it more than an arbitrary roadblock that forces you to take a different path while you're already halfway down this one. In several ways, you can feel the game being a bit behind the times on what survival horror games are these days, and we can only hope the next game, remake or new entry, can learn from this experiment to catch up with its contemporaries. As an introduction to the series or just to the tale of the twins, this is a fine starting point. After all, 2 has one of the best plots in the series, really only rivaled by 3 and maybe 4. When comparing it to the original Fatal Frame 2, I think this one generally wins on graphics, which it should. It'd be embarrassing if it looks worse than the one that came out 23 years ago. The story is barely changed across all 3 versions, aside from the twins being older in the Wii version and presumably this one too. As far as gameplay, it depends how much of a purist you are about the perspective change in the Resident Evil and Silent Hill remakes. If you hate it and insist on everyone knowing it, you probably won't like this one. But if you're not a tiny baby man with puny arms, you should enjoy it. My hope for the future is that they don't become reliant on remakes and do try new things. Maybe some older heroines, even older than Rei, to explore anxieties people face as they age and march closer to their own deaths. Perhaps a slightly more contemporary location to shake things up, but without losing the J-horror aesthetics. And don't be afraid to retcon a few things here or there when you can recognise the shortcomings. The incest, I'm talking about the incest. Please get rid of it, no one likes it. The game also has a photo mode fittingly, but much like Neo's, the game world doesn't freeze when accessing the menu, limiting options significantly. You cannot take a cute photo of Mio holding Mayu's hand, it's bullshit! If you liked this video, why not subscribe and support me on Patreon like these fine people here? You get early access to new videos for just $1 a month. If not, then make sure to share it with your enemies so they can suffer along with you.